We're good to go?
Yes, thank you, Ben.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everyone on the committee. And thank you, everyone, for joining today. Really appreciate everyone jumping on board. This is the second time I've ever done a Zoom type meeting. The last one was actually, was only 5 people. So this is awesome. So we've got over 60. So a little bit about me. My name's Ben's Bees. I've been a beekeeper for almost 30 years. And you're going to all look at me and go, Ben, you don't have that many grey hairs. Well, I've got a few poking through now. So it's actually a true story. When I was 14, I said to Mum and Dad, I don't want a puppy or a kitten. I want a beehive. And that was 42 now. So that was 28, 29 years ago. And we're going to see a little bit of footage. I was actually lucky just recently, my parents found some footage. They had an old camcorder and of me with my first hive. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. So what I do as far as a beekeeper, so a full-time job, I have employees that work for me. I'm sort of lucky because I do a little bit of what I call licorice all sorts. So I do a little bit of everything. So I do a little bit of pollination. And that's actually kind of interesting because everything's 2 weeks earlier. I've already been up to the other side of Swan Hill this week. Just on the other side of there, so with the plums, and they're in flower, and it's 2 weeks earlier. So I do a little bit of that. I'm very, very mindful as to where my bees go, because the bees for me, they are my pets. They really are. I really just absolutely love my bees. And so very mindful where they go. So I have a really good relationship with the orchardist. And I generally try and target organic farms. So organic farms that don't use any pesticides, fungicides, or herbicides. So I target them. And things like apples, I do apples for like cider apples and cider pears. So I do that. It's actually interesting. It's not, you are my people. So everyone watching today, the hobbyist beekeeper, I'm your people. I don't see myself as a commercial beekeeper, even though I'm running over 250 hives now. I don't like that word commercial because, as I said, you're my people. The hobbyists, are the best beekeepers around in the world. No matter if you're in Warburton or if you're in Sydney or if you're overseas. And the reason is because the hobbyist beekeepers, I love your passion and how you look after the bees. Where for me, the pollination, I have to do a little bit of it because it helps, for the income for paying things, because like diesels, I spend about, on average, depending on the time of year, but I average about $200 a week just in diesel, which seems like a bit of an oxymoron because it's here I am like saving the bees and helping bees, but I'm actually using diesel. But anyway, so I do that, and then I've also got, and this is what I love about bees. As I said, I do licorice all sorts. I'm actually also got an online shop, so I could be making candles. This morning, I've got like a little factory, and I was embedding wax into the sheets, the wax frames. And I've just finished. Every year, I like to have 3,000. And today, before coming on board to talk to everyone, I've just finished doing 3,000 of them. So I do that. I also obviously do a bit of honey, but honey's the least thing that I do. I don't do much in as far as honey because I can do a little bit of everything. So I try and minimise moving my bees around. So I do that. Now I'm also, strange as it is, I'm a licensed pest control technician. Now all you folk here that are watching, you're all going to know the difference between a bee and a wasp. Everyone does in the Yarra Valley. By the way, I grew up in Seville East, and I used to go to Yellingbo Primary School when it was open. So that's where I grew up. I now live in Blackburn North. So I'm a licensed pest control technician. So, and that's the reason is because all the city slickers, actually, well, not all of them, but a lot of them don't know the difference between a bee and a wasp. So I've got a license to actually kill those. So I do that. I also do mentoring. So I do a lot of helping people with their bees. I sell bees, and I love selling, bees to hobbyist beekeepers because it's just so, for me, it's a really feel good thing where someone's their first bees, no matter if they're 16 or if they're 60 plus and it's their first hive, you know, you see it is like someone buying a puppy or a kitten, and you see them and they put them into the car and off they go. And I love it when people tell me how their bees are going and so forth. So I help people with bees and sell the bees. I do a couple of different strains, but always with the hobbyist beekeepers, I do the Italian strain, just for the fact is they're calm and docile. When I work with them, you know, I can work with them in my birthday suit, in the nude, and not get stung. I don't recommend anyone does that, but and I haven't done that. But it's anyway. So that's how calm they sort of are. So so I do that mentoring, and as I say, helping people, and I do a lot of workshops too. Workshops like, you know, obviously with this climate, with what's happened on obviously with this bug, which we won't go on about. It is what it is. But one thing is also too, I do a lot of traveling overseas. Now, I think it was a year ago, I think Joe mentioned today, the other day, it was a year or 18 months ago, I'd done a talk, and I done a talk on beekeeping around the world. And it was actually, I'd been staying with beekeepers everywhere from Ireland, Scotland, France, Switzerland. And since then, at the start of the year, I'd done a little bit of travels into Fiji and Penang. I took my children on a holiday to Fiji, and it's funny because no matter where in the world I go, okay, there's a destination I want to go to. Okay, I'm automatically looking for beekeepers. I find beekeepers because there is so much to learn. As I said, I've been keeping bees for a long time now. I'm learning every single day, you know, and it's just like no matter how much you think you know, you realise you don't know about bees. And that's why they're such a special little creature, these little animals. And I love it. And you see how people do things. Some things are bad, some things are good. You know, I've taken ideas away and to help me and help better my bees, because no matter where we are in the world, it's the one thing we want is fat, healthy bees. That's what we want. So I do a lot of traveling, and as I said, no matter where I go, and that's the powers of obviously social media, you know, with Instagram, with Facebook, LinkedIn, you know, these are really good platforms. So I always encourage someone, once this gets away and we can travel again, is, you know, if you're traveling, find a beekeeper, because, you know, that's the one thing, I tell you what, a lot of different industries and there's different personalities. The one thing with all you beekeepers are always a friendly bunch. You know, they're always really, you know, it might be a bit sort of very full on, maybe they want to talk about their bees for hours and hours, but, you know, they're always friendly. You know, and that's what I love about the beekeepers. So, so started this year, I went to Fiji and found some beekeepers, and which we're going to see some slides in a second. And I also went. I went to Penang first, and then I was back because I had to go to Tasmania to do it was like a 4-day. It was actually a 3-day course with these junior beekeeping clubs in Tasmania. So I do a lot of, as I said, traveling for bees, even like doing a lot of talks. I was at, if anyone's familiar with Apimondia, I went there. That was in Canada last year in Montreal, and I was fortunate enough to do a talk over there, which I was really stoked about. The next one's every 2 years, Apimondia, and the next one's in Russia, in Ufa, which is in the very south of Russia. And so, but hopefully we'll see what happens with, but yeah, I'll be going to that again. So Apimondia, really fantastic. It is, to paint a quick picture. Now I could talk, I'm one of those beekeepers that can talk for hours. So if I start seeing people sort of falling asleep, I'll wind it up. So with Apimondia, it's the biggest beekeeping conference in the world, and they change it every year. It's been in Melbourne. I think it was in Melbourne 2004, I think 2003. So it changes every year, and in 4 years' time, it's going to be in Santiago in Chile, and all the beekeepers from around the world go there, and it's like a conference. It goes for 5 days, and it is amazing. Like, you're just meeting people. Now, when I say amazing, we're talking about 10,000 people go. And you've got everyone that's a hobbyist beekeeper that I met has got one hive. There was a guy from the States. He's running 50,000 hives, 50,000, which is unreal. I think the biggest beekeeper in Australia runs about 5,000-6,000. So, you know, imagine the dynamics of that. So yeah, really good. Apimondia was absolutely brilliant. So yeah, so that's a little bit of insight to what I do. As I said, I'm on social media. Ben's Bees. You'll put that in, you know, Instagram, Facebook, you'll find me. And always what I do is a lot of different content and things. And I've just started a couple of months ago a podcast, Bees with Ben, and I'm interviewing different people, and it's really cool. And I've got one coming every Thursday, Bees with Ben. It's on all your platforms, iTunes and so forth. If you get a chance, also listen to that, because it's becoming really popular. And I love sharing knowledge, not only from me, but from the other beekeepers that I've met. And as I've said, I've seen beekeepers with one hive, they might have only kept them for 1 month, 6 months, 1 year. But it's brilliant, because the way one beekeeper, hobbyist beekeeper, the way they look after their bees, the way they know about their bees, the way they're passionate about the bees is absolutely brilliant. So I love that. So anyway, so here we are. We're going to talk about bees in Fiji and a little bit in Penang. But there's there we go. Let me just bear with me here. So here's a little. It may or may not have audio, but so this is when I was 13, going on 14, and then we'll talk about the in Fiji. So how I was never influenced by any beekeepers. I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated, and just like I am today. And there was his name was Benjamin Cox, and he was a beekeeper in Seville. And if anyone remembers him, as I said, we're going back, sort of, 25, 30 years plus. And I remember my old man, my dad would buy, my dad was a firefighter, and he would buy the jars of honey, and my dad always had honey. I always remember he'd always buy it from a beekeeper, and I'll never forget. I don't know if he'd done it deliberately, but Mr. Cox, what he would do is there's always dead bees. There'd be 2, 3, 4, 5 dead bees in the jars of honey. Now, I wasn't sure if that's because he was getting older and he couldn't see, or if it was a deliberate act. It actually put some dead bees in his honey as a way of saying the authenticity of it. So maybe, but anyway, and so I wanted these bees. Now, my parents, I'm an only child, but I'm never spoiled. Was never spoiled. I do share and play well with others, but it was interesting. They said, "You want bees, son? You go get them." Now, I was lucky enough. I loved work, and I still do. For some reason, I just love work. If I love something, I give it 100%. And I love working. So I grew up in, I said, Seville East, and I used to do help with fruit picking. And I started when I was 12 years old. And I was making, sometimes $20, $30 a day, which was great, going back 30 years ago for a young bloke who's 12, 13. So I always had a little bit of money. And anyway, my parents said, "You want a beehive? You organise it and you pay for it." And I paid $60 for that hive you see in the photo. We'll go back. So anyway, yeah. So that little video there, but I'll see if I can. Let me know how to go back. But anyway, so I don't think there's no audio on it anyway, because it was an old camera. But that hive there, it actually ended up dying. It was about 18 months later from the queen was viable, the queen failure, or something happened. I didn't know then, and Mr. Cox ended up replacing that for me. And so ever since, it's been, I've been keeping bees. It's been a business for me since 2006. So 14 years, it's been a business. So, and as I said, I just love what I do, and I love meeting people, and I love, as I said, traveling and the hobbyist beekeeper. So that's why I'm waiting. As I said before, I'm usually away winter. I'm traveling, sort of the northern hemisphere, getting some sun, working on my tan, my albino tan, and but obviously I can't this year, and it's kind of like I want to defrost, but I'm all geared up, ready to go.
Go back to the video. You could try the back arrow key.
Oh, back arrow key, okay. Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Now okay, awesome. Let's go play it. There we go. Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Well, so what we'll do, we'll play it, and we'll see.
The bee in the pollen, and I'm not sure it's one of my bees.
So as far as with that, I'm not sure if anyone could hear or not, but it's very, as I said, we're going back 30 years ago, so the audio is not going to be good anyway. But, you know, I was talking about, obviously, the pollen. I used to love seeing what bees do, and I'll never forget. I was a cheeky little bugger as a kid. I remember being 12, 13, there was a wild hive in a tree out in Oxalic. And I was never scared of bees. I don't know why I'd get stung, but I remember this, what I used to do, and I was young and silly, but I used to get sticks and throw it at the hive to razzle them up and see how far I could go until they stung me or get in my hair. So I don't know why, I just used to think it was my game. As I was an only child, so I had to make up my own entertainment, but to razzle these bees up. And another thing that got me into big trouble, I learned very young, I could pick up bees. Like just pick them up, they're foraging on a flower, I could pick them up and grab them by the wings. And I knew without getting stung. So I went to school in Mombolk, and I used to catch these bees and I'd sting me mates. and I tell you now, yeah, I got into some fair income trouble doing that. Some big trouble. So probably part of the reason why I failed year 10. But anyway, another story. So yeah, so I as I said, so I've just absolutely loved bees. So here. So as I said, in the start of the year, I was in January, went to Fiji, and I found now this particular chap was actually driving along, and Shavek, so he's an Indian Fijian, and he's running 500 hives. So he's having the Apis mellifera, and they're a mixture between the Italians and the Carnolians. And as you can see, it's hot. For those who've been to Fiji, or have not been to Fiji for that matter, stunning environment, stunning. And you can see they do obviously sugarcane and the burning and so forth in the background. But Shavek, and it was his family, absolutely beautiful, beautiful family. And they, just one of those things, I don't know, with beekeepers, we all resonate with each other because, you know, being on holidays, here I am spending, you know, a day, you know, with a full day with Shavek, working and managing with the bees. So very resourceful people as far as obviously what they do. You can see his hood on his beekeeping suit. He's used shade cloth, and there's another reason for that, because these bees. And it seemed to be across the board from seeing, and I've travelled a lot, and we'll see in Penang later on, we see the opposite. But the bees were pissy, angry bees. I don't know if it was part of the weather, but they're just something they just suit right up. You can see he's got those nitrile gloves, because, you know, the other beekeeping's cotton ones that we're all familiar with, he said don't actually work because the bees will sting through it. We'll see in a second. You can see they're all on stands, and we'll see why in a second as to why they're all on stands. But it's a beautiful environment, and he's as I said, he runs about 500 hives. The honey's very different, very, very different, and that's one thing I love. You know, meeting beekeepers is honey. Even a hobbyist beekeeper, the best present they can give me is their first harvest, like a wee little jar of honey, because their honey. Their first harvest from a beekeeper is the most precious, beautiful thing that they've done. They've worked with their bees and they've extracted it. And I absolutely love that. And it's one of the best presents, and I love it. And I've got jars everywhere, and because that honey, remember, that's a story. You know, it's not just the bees have collected it and it's food, and you put it in your cup of tea or you put it on your porridge or whatever. That jar of honey is a story, and that goes for everyone's honey around the world. You know, particularly these people. So very, very, and I love that. But their honey's very different, very darker in colour, and also doesn't candy as readily because of all the tropical type trees. You can see that darker sort of strain of bees there. They're dealing with the environment as opposed to us. We're all in our winter. Over there, they've got 2 seasons: wet season, dry season. And this was on the sort of on the wet season, and you can sort of see the drones there, the drone cells, just all sort of on there, and you can see the darker strain. If you look at the stripes on the bees, you can see that they're actually that cross between an Italian and a Carnolian. And there's a bit of a close up on the gloves there, and just obviously I love that resourcefulness of using shade cloth. Which is I love seeing go into these developing. I don't know if third world countries is the right word, but developing countries. I think in Australia we seem to throw things out a bit, quite quickly. Where over there, no, they'll fix it up, and they make things themselves. And as you can see, there's a nice sort of pattern of brood. You can see, it might have to be a bit of a close up, but they get a bit of chalk brood over there. And chalk brood's a common one, a fungal infection, and we get in hives. It seems to be obviously that high humidity, and I've seen this up North Australia in Cairns and Townsville, that you get, once you've got a high humidity, the chalk broods. So I've never had an issue with chalk brood here. Sometimes you get certain times of the year, a bit of a stress vector. For those who aren't familiar, just joining chalk brood, we get lots of diseases, pests and diseases, and chalk brood's one, it's a fungal infection. So you get these little mummies, and they're either white or black in colour, and it's the half or semi-developed larvae have died within a cell, and the bees come and clean them out. I'm not sure if the jury's is out at the moment on it, but if you put a banana in it, get a banana, cut it in half, put it on top of the frame so the bees can eat it. Apparently it's the potassium in it which helps clean it up, but just a little tip for there. But just watch banana smells around your bees too, because it can make them a bit pissy. Because the smell of bananas is very similar to the alarm pheromone to bees, so there's something to be mindful there. Now you can see me there. You can probably just see there, I'm sweating. I'm like fair income. I've been a lot of places. I work hot. We get these, as you know, there's 40-degree days here in Melbourne. It's hot. And it's sort of above 38. Usually won't work with the bees because I don't want to stress them out. But the humidity, it was 105%. It was just like having this suit on. It just was like, just unbelievable. Just the absolute sweat. You can see he feeds sugar. Oh yeah, there's the bee stings. Now I'm lucky. Here's a question I get asked a lot. How many times have you been stung? Now I've made, I don't know. If someone said to me, if I worked it out, maybe I wouldn't say tens of thousands of times, probably maybe hundreds of thousands of times. I'm lucky. That's the reaction there. So I think on there was about. I think I was like, can't count, but it was over 10 stings on that one particular hand, because he gave me gloves, but. For those who haven't met me, I'm a big lad. I'm 6'3", 108 kilos, and his gloves wouldn't fit me. So, and I'm fine, but as I said, they were nasty, nasty bees. A little tip for anyone with your bees: if you get stung and you get a reaction, which is completely normal for people. So I'm lucky. My body is mostly honey and bee venom. The little tip for you is. Hemorrhoid cream. So if you get stung and it hurts and you get itchy because it hurts, hemorrhoid cream, Productial, is a little tip for everyone. So because it does, because it's actually interesting. A lot of people don't know this. I'm not sure, we won't get everyone to put their hand up if they've got hemorrhoid cream, but I know it seems to be, I tell people this, a lot of people do, which is fine. It's just interesting, but it's actually interesting in that hemorrhoid cream, it's a steroid, and it's also a numbing agent in it, so it really helps. But anyway, so good little tip for everyone. We can see they're feeding sugar. That's one thing I've noticed traveling a lot. These commercial beekeepers are big on feeding sugar, and feeding sugar is, in my view, and I'm sure everyone's going to be on the same page here. We should, and as far as being a hobbyist beekeeper, recreational beekeeper, is feeding sugar should only be done to save the bees. But what happens is a lot of these countries, and it's big in New Zealand, I've sort of travelled through New Zealand, where they completely take all the honey away, and then we give them sugar syrup or so forth. And this is dry sugar. Interesting, I've never seen anyone feed it. It's actually, you can see it's a little bit on the verge of being raw sugar. It's got molasses in it. And for everyone, bees struggle to digest molasses. And I asked him that, and he said, no, it's fine. So whether the bees are used to it, but yeah, so he feeds them on these boards. But yeah, so it's not something, I'll feed sugar, myself, because sometimes, you know, there was a drought for 10 years, and particularly out in the Yarra Valley side of town, through Seville and Coldstream and so forth, Sylvan and Monbulk, you know, it was about just before the messmates, just after Christmas. There's a bit of a dearth there, and someone's got to feed sugar. So, but, you know, with this whole taking all the honey and giving them sugar is not the right thing. And that's another thing. People getting into bees. So if you have to get into bees and you've got bees, I always tell people this, is remember, bees make honey for themselves. They don't make it for us. Very important. They make it for themselves. They don't make it for us. Now that seems, yeah, Benny, that's logical, but you'll be surprised. I said I sell lots of hives to people every year, and it's interesting that people, this mindset, and I think it's important that we remember, if conditions are good, you know, they're the only animal to produce a surplus. So, you know, because you look at, you know, chicken is producing eggs is obviously a life. Milk is to feed the calf, or, you know, I mean, the livestock or whatever. But bees are the only animal to produce a surplus to their needs when conditions are good. So just remember that. I always tell people that bees make honey for themselves; they don't make it for us. As I said, and talking, obviously there'll be subjects and other speakers and the club and so forth talk about it, but, you know, always ask before you're going to go do your harvest, should I just do that? Because sometimes I've noticed in the Yarra Valley, you know, just after the tea tree, we can have a bit of a cold patch in the sense of the nectar flows coming in. So yeah, you can sort of see there the sugar. I prefer feeding sugar syrup if sugar has to be fed, because sugar syrup, there's two things you do. Sugar syrup is, in the warmer months, is better because the bees can take it up. But for those, I actually feed, if it's cold, I actually make myself what's called a bee food or a fondant. And that's basically, it's 20% glucose and 80% sucrose. And it's kind of like white icing sugar mixture. It's made for the bees. And it's better for them as far as just being sucrose. So not the best photo there, but you can sort of see there's Miss Queen there. Actually, interesting, something, you know, talking about learning and so forth, is I just recently found out, recently, a week or 2 weeks ago, back in the 1600s, they used to think that the queen bee was actually the king. There was the king. So it was interesting, and that was in the 1600s. It was a Dutch beekeeper was getting into bees, and actually, it's a queen. So I thought it was interesting. So bees in Fiji, now obviously they get pests and diseases, but one thing they get is cane toads. And cane toads up north in Queensland will knock hives around, but these cane toads, apparently they will eat all the bees out of a hive, which I thought was absolutely incredible. So that's why they're on these stands, and you can sort of see them on there. There's Chevek. He makes his own hives there, and you can sort of see they're all on the stands. But the stands are because of the cane toads. I know I said it before, but as I said, it was hot. You know, it was really hot. It was actually raining too, so you had that misty type rain. And it was interesting looking at, sorry, not the best photo there, but just wanted to sort of put that in there, is, you know, he makes everything himself. And that's one thing. I've been through Southeast Asia, and I'm seeing bees in Vietnam, and it's interesting. They all make everything from scratch. You know, their frames, and I love that. So he gets all the wood, and it's all made by himself. And you can see, look at that for a job. You know, I get my frames pre-wired now because I go through, but I still embed the wax onto them. But I just see that, and to me, that is beauty there. I don't know. I just love that, because I see that as passion. I see that as a lot of human hours working, is all those frames. And yeah, so I absolutely love seeing that. So we went, so still in Fiji, and I just love these boxes. So I went on to the other side of Fiji, and these hives, absolutely stunning, that particular photo. I've forgotten the name of, someone may know that particular tree in the background there, red flowering tree of sorts. It was, I've forgotten, to be honest, but that yields a bit of nectar. And so you can see the hives there. Now, notice the bricks, right? Notice those Besser block bricks on top of the hives there and the rocks, right? Interesting, you know what they're for? Cyclones. They get cyclones come through. And I said, does that actually keep the hives? They said, no, it doesn't keep the hives in place, but they found that by putting these bricks will stop the lids from falling off. Now they had, I think it was 6-7 years ago, that real big cyclone. I've forgotten the name of it. Was it Cyclone Arthur? Someone may remember. But they're running about 80 odd hives, and they lost nearly all of them down to 5. And so they gradually got their numbers back. But you can see there, and I just love that photo, just seeing there. And they've got these, the lovely couple, they've got their little, like a little honey shack. And it was really cool. They do like little educational type things, and basically very similar to what I do. You know, they sell their bees, and bees in Fiji are starting to become quite popular, slowly, nowhere near as what Melbourne's like, but it's starting to become, you know, people more interested and sort of learning about it. So, and you can see that they make all their little different bits and pieces and so forth. And as I said, the honey, I've got a jar of it here, but it's very, obviously the flavours of honey is very subjective. I like the European flavours because, you know, the heathers and things are very neutral and they're aromatic, but very sort of clean on the palate. The Australian honeys are very, you know, robust, punchy. These eucalyptus and banksia, and, you know, they're really vibrant. The honeys over there are very, I love them. Don't get me wrong, I love them, but it almost, when you try that particular honey, it is floral. You almost taste like you're actually in a tropical country. So very, very, very good honey. Quite dark. It's really quite dark honey. That's my son. I used to live in Queensland, and there's a cane toad, and I showed my son Byron. Mine's got 3 children, and they're right into bees, and I showed my son how to catch a cane toad, and how to catch a cane toad without getting the poison from the glands, because they can make you a crook. So I taught him that. Now this photo here, interesting, talking about Fiji. So Fiji, that circle over there is over in Suva. I spend most of my time in Nadi and Rakakiraka, if I pronounced that right. They're on the other side of Tava there. Now it's interesting, that red line there, it was 18 months ago, Fiji had not had Varroa Mite, Varroa Destructor. Now, for those who are not sure on Varroa Mites, it's a little flea. And what it does is it sucks the blood or the hemolymph off the bee, and it transmits viruses and diseases. Now, in Australia, we're the only continent in the world not to have it. And this pest, Varroa Destructor, is very nasty. They've had Varroa Jacobsoni in Townsville, I believe Cairns, which is, they detected that on the Asian honeybee. And they've just worked out that the Varroa Jacobsoni can host shift from the Asian honeybee, which is the Apis cerana, to the European honeybee, the Apis mellifera. So, which is pretty full on. And I was in 2016. I was lucky enough to go up there and be part of the biosecurity, looking for hives and helping them with that, which is another story. But yeah, but Varroa. So the reason why I sort of brought this talking about Varroa is Varroa Destructor, really nasty pest, really, really nasty. Now, I've travelled around now, seeing in Europe as well as the UK, beekeepers, they're running quite a few hives. They're happy. I know it seems crazy, but they're happy if they lose 30-40% of their hives over winter. That's crazy. Now, if we lose that sort of numbers here, it's crazy. And bees do die. It does happen. It can be queen Varroa or something. But this Varroa Destructor is absolutely absolutely nasty. Now, little heads up, we've all got to keep this quiet, little secret squirrels. But I've got a friend of mine who I stayed with he's a English chap. I stayed with him. He lives in France, in northwest France. And he's actually just got, now I wasn't aware of this until literally less than a week ago. A good friend of mine, having a yarn to him. He's just got these Varroa resistant bees. They've come from Belgium, and really fascinating, but they're actually 100% resistant. So what it means is actually clean themselves. They're hygienic. They'll clean the Varroa. In a size comparison, it's like having a soccer ball sucking on me. So, so yeah, it's a really fascinating things. Now, obviously, we don't have that here. I think it was 2018 in July, a ship coming to Melbourne had a container on it, had a wild swarm on it. That wild swarm, the captain called it in. I think he was 8 or 10 kilometres offshore, called it in. The hive was destroyed. The hive was tested, had Varroa. Now, the reason why I'm sort of talking a little bit about Varroa, and I'll come back to the Fiji in a minute, is if we get Varroa here in Australia, it's going to decimate our hives. It's going to change. It's actually probably the easiest way to describe it. What we get Varroa in Australia is going to be what like COVID-19 is to people. It's going to change. It's going to alter everything, and so that's why it's important on the biosecurity level that we all do our bit. As a hobbyist beekeeper, inspecting. If you see something, just let someone know. I've seen this. I'm not sure, because I can assure you now it's not if, but when we get Varroa. It might be a year, might be 100 years, might be somewhere in between, but it's a devastating pest. Now, to kill the particular Varroa, a couple of ways, 2 ways. One's using oxalic acid vaporization. So you're putting an acid and you burn that acid, creates vapor, and it basically singes the legs off the Varroa so they fall down and die. And it really knocks the hive around, because you hear the hives humming because it's pissing the bees off. The bees are getting agitated and all sort of fired up. And the other way is using, and this is why we do, and I'm not being sort of overly patriotic, but we do have the best bees in the world in Australia, is because the other way of killing Varroa is by using a miticide, using a chemical strip or chemical liquid drops, putting in the hive. And I've seen this all firsthand, that affects the bees and also builds up in the wax, where it's used multiple times. These chemicals build up in the wax, and the bees eventually won't use the wax because it's just got high amounts of these chemicals in it. So we see there. So back to Fiji Varroa. Now that photo there, that was they've done tests and they found that. Now 2 weeks later, this is 2 weeks. Now that's how big that spread. So within 2 weeks of Fiji. Now, with for those who've been to Fiji or other islands, they're all on island time. We've got this island type attitudes. And I was talking to Shivek, who he's got bees just on the outsides of Nadi there. And he's like, yeah, well, it'll be fine. That real islander type attitude. But I'm not sure if we realise it's just going to be such a full-on thing, because, as I said, it's affecting the hive. So Fiji have got a very similar to New Zealand. They've got a ban on bringing any honey in there, even bee products. So now, just quickly, I've just got a couple of slides here because I know I can ramble on. I can go on a bit. So here I've gone to Penang. And being going to Penang here, this is Steve, and I've just got a couple of slides here. Steve, now his bees were complete opposite to Fiji. You can see him there. They were the calmest bees, and this was Penang. This was at Christmas time, and they were just so calm, really calm bees. And you can sort of see. You can see the queen there. If you look centre to the right by a smidgen, you see the queen there. And you see they're more typically these Italian type strain. And so, yeah, really calm bee. But interesting, and there's one thing, what he was doing is he uses these, and I love people's, like, I know beekeepers, we're crazy. We're all absolutely cuckoo. But I love it. I love it. But what's interesting, it gets these electromagnetically charged panes of glass, and it creates a certain frequency. And he puts it in his hive, and it helps. And he's got like these meters that it produces this frequency. I don't know. I think it was a megahertz, I think. But he produces this frequency. And his bees seem to be just like they were really like relaxed bees. You know, they were working, doing their thing. And there's these panes of glass. And so absolutely fascinating. So, but yeah, so notice actually one thing with that frame, and see a nice piece of wood's nice, but that frame is quite dark, quite black, which is interesting. A lot of people would say, oh, no, time to rotate that, render that out. Interesting having me, I save a lot of bees, so I do cutouts and swarms and all that type of thing. Is, you know, it's interesting you see when bees like that in a hive, they actually generally won't want to use it, only if they have to. So if they have to use it, they will, but it's a very interesting thing there. That mask, just on the subject of Varroa, they've got Varroa over in Penang. As I said, Australia is the only continent in the world not to have it. He uses oxalic acid vaporization. It's classed as organic. So, but look at the gear you got to wear, because it gets in your eye, burn your eyes. There's actually there's been beekeepers, and I say plural, that have died from by giving their bees oxalic acid vaporization, because it's gone into their lungs. And I thought that was a cute toad. How cute is that? Anyway, it seems to be, as I said, these cane toads are everywhere. I don't know. I'm like a big kid. And no matter if I see a snake, you know, I'm catching the snake, and the cane toads and everything. So absolutely love that. And these, just in Penang, you can see that nice queen. A lot of hobbyist beekeepers, recreational beekeepers will ask me, I haven't seen the queen. I'll tell you a quick little, just sort of slowly, just come to a conclusion here, is a little trick when you're looking at the queen, right? When people like looking at this slide here, there's your frame, and you're holding your frame out. A lot of people like you're looking at individual bees. A little trick, and to see if this helps people. When you're looking, this for me, you know, as I said, there's different ideas, and don't forget what I do, another beekeeper may do something different, it works for him. So that's why getting your own style. So that's the best thing about bees. You know, at the end of the day, we want big, fat, healthy bees. That's what we want, but there's different ways of doing it. But one thing with the queens is when you're looking for them, you look through the frame. You know those magic eyes where you stare at it and it changes shape and turns into something? Called magic eye. Is if you sort of stare through it and zigzag your eyes up and down, and in your head, your mind, try and look for a abnormality in shape. Don't, because what we get looking for the queen, and we're looking at individual bees, and drones can throw you out if it's getting springtime and summer. And there's plenty of drones in there, but just in your head. So a little trick for you. Come springtime, everyone, when you're doing your first inspection and you want to find the queen, is try that little trick. Is just like look through the hives. Don't look at individual bees. So you're almost staring through it. So a little trick for you. Just a couple of slides here in Penang. Once again, cane toads. You know, you wouldn't think the cane toads are just so full on. They've just got everything's got to be raised, and you can see down the bottom they have like he made this guy, Steve. He made these hives, and for ants, they get problems with ants too. You can see me there. I love the weather. As I said, I miss going away. Usually this time of year, I'm away. Now, for those who does anyone know what they are? Yes, yeah, I can see someone. Yeah, they stink. For those who don't know, they're called durians. Yeah, a durian. So it's a fruit, a native fruit to Southeast Asia, and they smell. Consistency and signs like custard. I actually I'm crazy. I actually like them. I find them very nice. Durian is good, but it's got a smell. It's like sewage. It smells like poo. But it's got really nice flavour. But I tell you what, so can you imagine durian flower honey? Now I've got a jar of this. Now, I wish I could do this in front of everyone because I'll pass this around for everyone to try. But dare I say it, this honey smells like shit. It really, really does. It actually smells. It's the most rankest honey. It stinks. I've never tried honey before. I'm not sure, but Steve, beautiful man, beautiful beekeeper, he's so proud of this, and he gave me this durian flower honey. I've still got it in the cupboard over there. It'll probably stay there for 50, 100 years. I wouldn't throw it out because it's so unique. This honey smells like poo. But I think that's it, everyone. I think that's the end of the slides.
So thank you so much, Ben. I think we have. I was just taking some notes saying, that we've learnt from finding queens to cane toads to poo honey.
Yes.
Let's not forget the hemorrhoid cream. So I've got a few questions down here in the chat, Ben. I don't know if you can.
No, I can't see them. No.
See the chat there as well. A question for later. This is from Kat. Best way to reduce moisture in the hives? We have humidity in the 80 to 90% range over midwinter.
That's good. Good question. So as far as having the humidity, well, it's a natural thing because the reason why we're going to look at why I got humidity. So if you look at it, so within inside a hive is 34 degrees. So 34 degrees, and then external temperature out in the Yarra Valley. I'm guessing everyone's out there. We could have, say, 10 degrees. Because of a 24, 25 degree shift, you get condensation. So, and it's actually interesting overseas where it snows, like areas like Poland, Germany, France and so forth, where they've got bees and it snows. It's actually not the cold that necessarily kills the bees. It's actually that condensation, that water, cold water dripping on the cluster of bees. So that's why it's important to actually have the hive tilted forward. Usually different mindsets of this, I won't get into it too much, but different mindsets is having ventilated bases, allowing ventilation. So that's usually a good sign. But the way I think, I'm a bit of a hippie, hence the beard, but I think it's sort of, if you look at, a hive in a tree, naturally it's not going to get condensation in there and so forth. So providing it's tilted forward, don't open up the lid or anything like that, because the thing is, you put ventilation on the lids, the bees just fill them up with propolis anyway. So I stopped using them because they fill them up. But yeah, so tilted forward. So if it does condensation or run out, give it another 6-8 weeks. Give it 3 months, we'll be complaining about the heat. It's going to get hot. So, but I wouldn't worry about it too much. Oh, I can't hear there, Joe.
Sorry, yes.
Oh, that's right.
There's another one. Are the colours significant of those beehives that were, I think, in Fiji?
Yes, yeah. So the significance is because, particularly, and I try and do the same myself, is because you get such a commercial aspect, but so many hives, what can happen is the bees can get confused because it's a very unnatural type thing to have so many hives in one condensed sort of area. So different colours and different shapes. So the bees will recognise. So they see in ultraviolet lights and different these particular colours, blues, pinks, purples. When they look at them, so they'll remember their hive. So that's why that. Plus the other thing is too, for me, it looks beautiful. I love seeing these people with beautiful coloured hives. I think they look so much nicer than like what I've got, predominantly white hives. I'm doing yellows. I've got a few yellows and a few blues, but I think it looks nice. But it's for the bees, so they don't drift. Because what can happen is if you've got a whole heap of them, one's on the ends can get full of bees.
Oh. Someone was saying that might be a Persian silk tree, maybe?
Oh, what was it? A Persian silk tree.
Persian silk tree.
Okay, Persian silk tree. Yeah, I'm thinking it's not a poinsettia. I'm thinking it.
Poinsettia?
Is that it? Yeah.
Not sure.
Maybe. If anyone knows the answer to that, because I've forgotten.
Also, Henny just wanted to mention that there was a great article on Landline today. Everyone can check it out later. It was on Varroa. I don't know if you've seen it, Ben. It was about the AI. They're checking every bee that comes in to see if it's got the mite.
Okay,
So that's on Landline. It's really interesting.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Are calmer bees less productive or less resilient?
Good question. For calmer bees, because there's a very talking about these the lineage of bees, and as I said, my friend's working. He's obtained these 100% Varroa resistant bees. Now the problem is, and he was talking about what can happen is if just line bred for resistance against Varroa, but they can be crap at producing honey. So when you're looking at that on a commercial aspect, it's not that viable. So you've got to outcross. So one thing I've noticed with calmer bees, the bees nice and calm, they don't seem as good at kicking out the African small hive beetles, which we've all got in our hives. They don't seem to be as good as doing that, as opposed to these darker colour bees, which are full of all fired up, that will actually seem to be a bit more cleaner in aspect. But yeah, good question. So it does, and I think that's why outcrossing sometimes is good, and the queen breeders do that as well. So yeah, good question.
So the last question is come from I think it is from Amanda. So knowing that bees make honey for themselves and not for us, how do you, Ben, manage that with a commercial interest?
Okay, good question. So because I run quite a few hundred hives, and honey is not my game, I don't sell a heap of shops. I've got like literally a dozen shops that I sell it to. I sell, actually if everyone can see it, this is how I sell my honey. So can everyone see that yellow box, that yellow house at the front?
Yep.
Does everyone see that? There's people there they'll be buying honey there now. So I actually sell, so that's like a little honey hut. So it's an honesty box system where people come in, buy my honey and go. It's actually been in the Herald Sun because it's been so unique. I had to move it back 22 centimetres because of the council.
I was going to say, did you have any worries with it?
Yeah, I had to move it that far because they went up. Anyway, but it is what it is. But so to answer your question, so I sell my honey there and a few shops, but I don't need, honey's not my aim, my goal. Like usually a commercial beekeeper works on 100 kilos. This is minimum. So a commercial beekeeper anywhere in Australia works on 100 kilos per hive, all right, per year. So per year, per hive, 100 kilos. So when you look at it like that, that's a lot of honey. So I'm lucky for me, because I'm liquish all sorts. And when I'm selling nukes, they get a big full frame of honey in there, sometimes two. So I do that. So I'm lucky where I'm selling bees, and the honey's, as I said, people just honesty box system straight out there. I don't need to sell honey. It's more for fun. So I like the word. It's almost like a byproduct, but I don't like that word byproduct because it's got like a negative connotation to it. Byproduct, but yeah. So it's so because I'm lucky that I do that. So I'm not a honey producer, but there are honey producers that they do exploit the bees and they just working them. So good question.
There's a few more questions there, but we may save them for what's happening in our hive. They're more to do with spring and what we need to get ready for. So, Ben, I'd just like to say thank you on behalf of everybody. If anyone wants to unmute themselves and say thank you to Ben. Otherwise, there's also a lovely little reaction you can do. If you can see the bottom, we can all give you a clap or a thumbs up.
Yeah, there's one clap. Yes, yeah, thank you. Two claps.
You've got
just want to say thank you so much to everyone, and for those who obviously got your bees, whether you had them for 50 years or you're yet to get bees, it's awesome. I love everyone's so excited and so passionate about bees, so that's really, really cool. And especially to this club, and I'm not just saying this. I do a lot of talks and so forth. And I love the Yarra Valley Beekeeping Club because you're a good bunch of people. You're my people because that's where I'm from. So I just want to say absolutely love you all, and thank you so much for having me. And also look forward to maybe, you know, if it's a year or whenever this bug comes and come on down, and I can bring in this durian honey for everyone to have a smell.
Oh, I'm sure everyone would love that. We welcome you. Thank you so much, Ben. You're welcome to stay on for what's happening in our hive, or we can say goodbye. Thank you.
I might fly because I just got to do a little bit of work. So
I'm sure
thank you so much, and thank you everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.